Good evening, I'm Amirul Aiman, and these are our top stories for tonight. Thailand frees 18 Cambodian soldiers under a new ceasefire agreement, and the UAE prepares to withdraw its remaining forces from Yemen amid a deepening rift with Saudi Arabia. All that and more coming up on AWANI International. Thailand has released 18 Cambodian soldiers who had been detained since July following the implementation of a renewed ceasefire between the two countries. Authorities in both Bangkok and Phnom Penh confirmed the release took place on Wednesday, describing it as a step towards upholding the truce and de-escalating a long-running border dispute. The ceasefire came into effect at noon on Saturday, ending nearly 3 weeks of fighting that left at least 101 people dead and forced more than 500,000 civilians from their homes. The soldiers were originally due to be freed a day earlier, but Thailand delayed the handover, citing alleged ceasefire violations, claims that Cambodia denied. Cambodia's defense ministry said the soldiers were handed over at a border checkpoint on Wednesday morning after spending 155 days in Thai custody before returning home. The United Arab Emirates announces that it is withdrawing its remaining forces from Yemen after Saudi Arabia backs a demand for their departure within 24 hours. The move intensifies a growing rift between the two Gulf states after Saudi Arabia accused Abu Dhabi of supporting separatists in the country. Earlier on the same day, Saudi-led coalition forces carried out airstrikes on Yemen's southern port city of Mukalla. Riyadh said the strikes targeted a UAE-linked weapons shipment destined for the separatist Southern Transition Council (STC). Saudi Arabia and the UAE were long regarded as twin pillars of regional stability. However, their interests have increasingly diverged, particularly over oil policy and regional influence. The STC, which initially supported Yemen's internationally recognized government against the Houthi rebels, launched an offensive against the Saudi Arabia-backed government troops this month, seeking an independent state in the south. Riyadh said it considered the move as a threat to its national security. In a statement, the UAE Ministry of Defense said it had voluntarily concluded the mission of its counter-terrorism units, the last remaining Emirati forces in Yemen. That's the headline for tonight. More news coming up shortly after the break.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. Mexico has rolled out sweeping import tariffs of up to 35% on countries without free trade agreements, targeting a broad range of goods from Asia. Officials say the move is aimed at protecting jobs and boosting domestic manufacturing. The new tariff takes effect January 1st.
The new duties apply across a wide range of products, from automotive parts and textiles to home appliances and furniture. It will affect countries like China, India, Indonesia, South Korea, and Thailand. Mexican officials say the tariffs are designed to protect around 350,000 domestic jobs in key industries. They insist the tariffs are not aimed at any one country, but are designed to strengthen key industries and reduce reliance on imports. China has strongly condemned the move, calling it misguided protectionism and urging Mexico to reconsider.
China is set to impose an additional 55% tariffs on beef imports, targeting major suppliers like Australia, Brazil, and the US. This comes as Beijing moves to protect its domestic livestock industry which has been facing falling prices from oversupply and strong foreign competition.
The additional 55% tariffs will apply when shipments exceed said quotas. For 2026, the total import quota is set at 2.7 million metric tons. Brazil receives the largest share at just over 41%, followed by Argentina and Uruguay. Australia and the US were allocated more modest quotas of around 200,000 and 160,000 metric tons, respectively. The measures will take effect from January 1st and run for 3 years, with the overall quota set to increase gradually through 2028.
China is urging the Netherlands to reverse actions against chip maker Nexperia, warning they are disrupting the global semiconductor supply chain. Beijing says Dutch measures are creating obstacles to chip production and has called on the Netherlands to act responsibly. China's Commerce Ministry criticized the Netherlands for continuing along what it called an incorrect path and said it had taken no meaningful steps to address the situation. Tensions escalated in September when the Dutch government moved to take control of Nexperia, a subsidiary of the Chinese-owned technology firm Wingtech. Dutch authorities said it wanted to prevent company secrets and production from being transferred to China. China responded by blocking the export of Nexperia's chips, most of which are packaged in China. Wingtech has since confirmed that it is in discussions with court-appointed custodians over control of the Netherlands-based chipmaker. Protests over soaring prices and currency collapse have spread across Iran, entering a third day. The unrest erupted in Tehran on Sunday over the Iranian rial hitting record lows against the US dollar and has spread to other cities. Traders and shopkeepers led the initial demonstrations, with students joining in by Tuesday. Iran is facing a double whammy of a crippling currency and sky-high inflation, with the rial losing nearly half its value this year and prices soaring over 42%. President Masoud Pezeshkian said authorities will listen to protesters' legitimate demands and a dialogue mechanism is being set up. On social media, many Iranians warn that high prices and corruption have pushed people to the point of explosion. Venezuela's currency has lost more than 80% of its value over the past year as inflation and rising living costs continue to squeeze the economy. The bolivar closed at 301 to the US dollar in its final trading session of the year, down from 52 to the dollar at the end of last year. Analysts said the sharp depreciation is fueling higher consumer prices, deepening already severe economic pressures on households across the country. The currency slump comes as President Nicolas Maduro's government faces increasing pressure from the United States under President Donald Trump. Washington has stepped up sanctions, imposed maritime restrictions, and tightened security measures targeting Venezuela, adding to strains on the economy. Bulgaria prepares to adopt the euro at midnight on Wednesday, becoming the 21st member of the Eurozone, nearly 20 years after joining the European Union. At midnight on Wednesday, Bulgaria will phase out its lev currency, ending a monetary system that has been in place since the late 19th century. Successive governments have backed the move, saying the euro could help strengthen Bulgaria's economy, strengthen ties with the West, and reduce Russian influence. But the switch has also sparked opposition, with some voicing concerns that switching to the euro could drive up prices. Outgoing Prime Minister Rosen Zeljakov said euro adoption will bring long-term gains for Bulgaria's economy, adding that the country ends the year with GDP of about 113 billion euros and growth above 3%. Bulgaria's entry raises the number of euro users across Europe to more than 350 million. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said Europe must assert its interests more forcefully to protect peace and prosperity in the year ahead. In his annual address, Merz warned that Europe is under growing pressure from Russian aggression, rising global protectionism, and more complex relations with the United States. He said the war on Europe's doorstep poses a direct threat to the continent's freedom and security, arguing that Russia's actions are part of a broader strategy targeting Europe, not just Ukraine. Merz also warned that global protectionism is intensifying, saying dependence on imported raw materials is increasingly being used as a form of political leverage. He added that ties with the United States have become more challenging since President Donald Trump returned to office, pointing to the impact of new trade tariffs. Britain, Canada, France, and several other countries say the humanitarian situation in Gaza has deteriorated further and now requires urgent action from Israel. In a joint statement released by the British Foreign Office, they urge Israel to take immediate steps to address worsening conditions in the territory. The statement calls on Israel to allow NGOs to operate reliably and ensure the United Nations can continue its work. Foreign ministers also asked Israel to lift restrictions on imports, including medical supplies and shelter equipment, and to open border crossings to boost the flow of humanitarian aid. Earlier this month, a global hunger monitoring body said famine conditions no longer existed in Gaza after improved food access. But humanitarian agencies warn more aid is still needed and essential items remain blocked. The U.S. Treasury has added 10 individuals and entities in Iran and Venezuela to its sanctions list of weapons-related activities. The Treasury says the measures target those linked to what it calls an aggressive weapons program involving cooperation between Tehran and Caracas. Among those sanctioned is the Venezuela-based company Empresa Aeronáutica Nacional S.A., along with its chair, José Jesus Urdaneta González, for supporting Iran's drone operations in Venezuela. U.S. officials said Urdaneta coordinated the production of unmanned aerial vehicles, working with both Venezuelan and Iranian military representatives. Washington said it would continue to act to deny Iran's military industry access to the U.S. financial system. The move comes as the U.S. has stepped up pressure on Venezuela through expanded sanctions and an increased military presence in the southern Caribbean. The U.S. has also sanctioned relatives and associates of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife as part of a broader measures targeting the Venezuelan government. The United Nations approves a 7% cut to its budget for 2026 as it grapples with a deepening financial crisis largely caused by unpaid member contributions. The General Assembly passed an operating budget of $3.45 billion for next year, down from $3.72 billion this year. The cuts include the elimination of around 2,900 positions as the UN moves to reduce costs across both administrative and operational areas. Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned the organization's cash position remains fragile, saying financial pressures will continue regardless of the final budget. The shortfall comes amid long-standing criticism from U.S. President Donald Trump, who has accused the UN of wasting taxpayers' money and called for a return to its core mission. The United States, which normally covers about 22% of the UN's regular budget, has not paid its $826 million contribution for 2025. Washington also owes a further $660 million in arrears from previous years. Kyiv is in talks with Washington over the possible deployment of U.S. troops in Ukraine as part of future security guarantees. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country remains committed to continuing discussions on how to end the war with Russia, adding he is ready to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in any format.
On Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump said he and Zelensky were close to an agreement to end the war, although key issues, including territorial disputes, remain unresolved. The two leaders met on December 28th at Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida. Proposals emerging from those talks include a 15-year U.S. security guarantee for Ukraine, with the possibility of extension. Ukraine is also preparing to host a new round of high-level security talks with national security advisors from Western allies on January 3rd. This will be followed by a meeting of national leaders scheduled for January 6 in France.
That concludes AWANI International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Amirul Aiman. Thank you for watching. Good night and Happy New Year.
Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know